Welcome to episode 42 of Shane Talks 99. It is September 24th, 1999, and we're wrapping up the month of September. All right, and I'm going to be honest here. I'm going to be completely honest. I did not watch Jacob the Liar this week. I did not enjoy Jacob the Liar back in 1999, and I don't. I know recently I've been talking a lot about how a lot of this like rewatching stuff 25 years later, how like it changes my opinion on movies and how like I see things differently and whatnot. But like Jacob the Liar is just one that I couldn't bring myself to rewatch it. Like I had no interest in seeing if my opinion has changed. Because I remember really hating this movie. And like I've been trying to figure out why. I mean, I remember not enjoying watching the movie, but then I think I've got some like other emotional shit going on with it because like the girl that I dated in 1999, this was one of her favorite movies at that point, and like I remember her asking me to get her the poster because I worked at the theater and whatnot. But like I remember going to her work and giving her the poster, and then like we broke up not too long after that. So like I already didn't like the movie, and then she did like the movie, and then she kind of broke my heart a little bit. So I mean, probably some like other trauma going on with this movie than just like not liking the movie. But like I didn't like it to the point that I had no interest in giving it a review, which is weird because like I love Robin Williams and like Robin Williams' character in this movie, like okay, I'll do like a quick recap of what I remember from the movie. Like it's World War II, I'm pretty sure. And like Robin Williams' character, like they're not even in Germany. I think they're in like Poland or somewhere. And like he starts telling the people in the neighborhood that he lives in, like he's like trying to be like this happy guy and boost everybody's morale and stuff like that. So he starts telling them lies about like stuff that he hears on the radio. Like like he claims he's got this radio and he can hear in on like what's going on in the war, and he starts making up all these rumors and like telling people, "Oh, I heard this, I heard that," and like I don't know, like I just there was I don't remember anything in this movie that I liked about it. Like, and I love Robin Williams, and like over the last 25 years, I've never run into anybody that was like, Shane, you really need to rewatch Jacob the Liar. It's not as bad as you remember it being. So like I didn't enjoy it in 99. And like that's like, Robin Williams was at a great point in his career, but 1999 was just a terrible year for him. I often talk about actors that have great years of 1999. Robin Williams is the exact opposite. 1999 was not a good year for him. And like he's just coming off because also like there's Jacob the Liar, which sucks, but in a couple of weeks, well, like sometime around Christmas, I think it was a Christmas Day release, sometime in December, we're gonna talk about Bicentennial Man, which is another Robin Williams movie that I hated this year. Um so anyway, I think I want to say it's a Christmas Day release. I could be wrong, but it's sometime late 99 though. But like the years before this, Robin Williams was on a roll. In 97, he did Good Will Hunting. The year before this, in 98, he did What Dreams May Come and Patch Adams, which were both like amazing films. So like he should have been at this great point in his career, and for some reason, just two pieces of crap of his were released in 99, and one of them was supposed to be like a Christmas blockbuster movie, and it sucked. Like it just and I'm not even the only one that feels this way. Like in 1999, Robin Williams was double nominated for a Worst Actor Razzie. And don't even get me started on the fact that he somehow, despite being nominated for this movie and for Bicentennial Man, he lost to Adam Sandler in Big Daddy, which like one of Adam Sandler's best films he's ever done. Like one of my favorite Adam Sandler movies, and he somehow won a Razzie Award for it. Like Sonny is one of the greatest characters Adam Sandler has ever played. I am very I'm still not over that fact that he got the Razzie. But anyway, I don't want to talk about that. Like the other actors that are in Jacob the Liar that matter are Alan Arkin and Leo Schreiber. I honestly wouldn't have remembered them being in this movie if I didn't look it up. I was curious if there was anybody else in the cast that was worth talking about. Those are the only two guys. And let's look at numbers real quick on this movie. It was a $45 million budget movie that in its entire run in theaters made $5 million. So that's a failure. Not a good movie. Um, let's see. Other like okay, let's look at this Rotten Tomatoes score real quick. Rotten Tomatoes score, a critic score of 29%. that lines up with me. I usually don't agree with Rotten Tomato critics, but for this movie, I do. I don't agree with the audience score on this, which gets a 63%. I guess there are people out there that like this movie. I am not one of them. I don't understand it. And then I thought, okay, let's double check this with the IMDb. Sure enough, it holds a 6.5 on the IMDb. I don't know. I know I'm super nostalgic about things, but like maybe people are giving Robin Williams too much credit in this movie. Um, Again, having not seen it for 25 years, but just remembering how much I hate it, like I'm not gonna say it's one of the worst films of '99, but it's definitely not one that I enjoy and have zero interest in ever talking about when I mention the year 1999. It's very, very, very far down the list of anything that's worth being talked about in 1999. So I don't know. Maybe someday, maybe somebody will convince me to rewatch the movie. Maybe someday I'll change my opinion on it, but I'm just not at that point right now where I give any cares about giving Jacob the Liar a rewatch. So let's move past that. Let's talk about the two movies this week that I did watch because they're both films that I'm gonna look forward to talking about. Um, so the next movie we're gonna talk about is a movie called Double Jeopardy, which is a movie that I actually really like and had fun with when I rewatched it. But I also have to address the fact that the plot of this movie is wrong to wrong to wrong to beyond wrong to more wrong than you could possibly be wrong about something in a movie. And like I just don't understand how nobody was like, this is completely not truthful and not factual as far as a plot device goes. Maybe we should not build our entire movie around something that is completely wrong. Um, Real quick about the movie, Tommy Lee Jones and Ashley Judd team up for this film. And the basic plot is Ashley Judd gets convicted of stabbing her husband to death and dumping his body over the side of a boat. Body's never found, by the way. While she's incarcerated, she gets told by other people, well, like before this, while she's incarcerated, she makes a phone call because her best friend is supposed to be watching her son, but while she's on the phone with her son, her son calls out, "Hey, daddy!" When her husband slash ex-husband slash dead husband walks into the room, we find out that Bruce Greenwood's been banging Ashley Judd's best friend, and they ran away together with her kid, and like convoluted, but whatever. It's a '90s, revenge plot movie. Like I'm fine with all of this. What I'm not fine with is then like the next 15 minutes of the movie has all of these other prisoners telling her 100% wrong and inaccurate stuff about how the double jeopardy law works. You're essentially convinced that you've already been convicted of killing your husband. Once you get out of jail, you've served your time, you're good. You can go up and actually kill this guy and get completely away with it. And they can't charge you again because of double jeopardy. And that is so completely false. That is not how the double jeopardy rule works. How did anybody in Hollywood like writing this go, oh yeah, let's maybe we shouldn't even worry about fact checking if this is how double jeopardy actually works. Like nobody ever was like, this doesn't really sound right. This doesn't sound legal. Maybe we should run this past the legal department and make sure we're not making a movie that's entirely wrong about how the double jeopardy law works. So, like I just like okay, let's address the double jeopardy law, which is a clause in the Fifth Amendment. It applies to one single incident and the exact specific details surrounding that incident and that incident alone. Incident in question here is stabbing her husband and dumping his body over into the middle of the water. Cool. If any of these facts are changed, thus creating a new crime. So killing somebody somewhere else at a different time creates a new crime, not the same crime. So what would happen is her original trial would be retried, at which point she would then be found innocent of killing him because he obviously wasn't killed. She'd be exonerated of that charge. And then she would be charged with murdering him the second time, where, the people in the movie tell her you can do it in front of a bunch of people and there's nothing they can do to you, which is wrong. There'd be a second trial uh, for the actual second murder. So I mean, that's literally how the facts work with double jeopardy. And like, let's take this one step further. Let's go one step further than this. Murder is it like, and this is relating it to the plot of double jeopardy. So murder is a state conviction. So, in the course of the film Double Jeopardy, she is convicted in the state of Washington for murdering Bruce Greenwood. She tracks him down to New Orleans, where somebody tells her, or, well, I mean, she makes the comment, I could shoot you in the middle of Mardi Gras and nobody could stop me. Again, completely not true in any way, as murder then would carry over to the state of Louisiana and be a completely different crime in another state where she could get convicted again because it has nothing to do with the conviction in the state of Washington. Like, literally, how did this script get past any legal department in any studio? I want to say it's a Warner Brothers movie, if I remember right. I could be wrong about that, but like, I just I don't understand how nobody was like, this plot is completely not factually correct in any way. I digress. I've vented about the legality of the film Double Jeopardy, but let's actually now talk about like it's a fun film. Like I really don't dislike this movie in any way. It's fine for what it is. It's kind of like I consider this to be like the Kmart version of The Fugitive. And I mean, that's probably because Tommy Lee Jones is in both of these movies, Double Jeopardy and The Fugitive. Like Tommy Lee Jones is tracking down somebody who's on the run. Um, there's a lot of similar plot points between The Fugitive and Double Jeopardy, which is fine. Like it's these aren't the only two movies that have this that goes on in it. But like, let me go back and talk about this real quick. When the movie came out, like the one thing I really wanted from this movie is like I really thought it would be cool if this turned out to be a prequel to The Fugitive. Like legit, hear me out on this concept. Like, what if the whole movie they never mentioned Tommy Lee Jones's character's name at all? Like you just he's never mentioned by name, like sir or stuff or whatever. Like there was never any time anyone was addressing him by name that we as the viewer saw. Everything plays out the way it does in the movie. He tracks her down, he finds her, they have their act three, confrontation with Bruce Greenwood, everything's going down, he gets shot, he's getting loaded into the ambulance, and then like Ashley Judd's like there with him and she's like, you've been chasing me and I still don't know your name. And he's like, my name's Samuel Gerard, and like he's, a cop from Washington State or whatever, like low job he had up there. Then while he's being loaded into the ambulance, like we see these two other guys walk up, doo, 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 and they're in like U.S. Marshal jackets, and they're like Detective Gerard or Patrolman Gerard or whatever. We'd like to talk to you about a job. Like we're really impressed by your tracking skills. We'd like to offer you a job with the U.S. Marshal Service. Like I don't know. I just thought that would be super. Like when the movie was over, I was like, man, it was so like it could have been a prequel to The Fugitive if they just would have done that with the script, and I don't know. Like, so I appreciate you hearing me out on that. I really thought it would have been cool if they had pulled something like that off, but they didn't, and it is what it is. Like again, there's nothing wrong with this movie when you just think about it as a mindless action, like B movie version of not it's not a B movie version, but like a lower quality version of The Fugitive. Like Tommy Lee Jones is tracking somebody down. You watch her try to do things to get to her end game. You watch him try to do things to catch up with her towards her end game. You get to see him do some detective-y like work. You get to see him start to think maybe she's not in the wrong for what she was doing. Like plot-wise, there is stuff that's annoying, but like it's not unbearable in any way. But like and like the really odd thing about this movie is like it's not the greatest script, but it was written by two guys named David Weisberg and Douglas Cook, and they were the two guys that wrote The Rock together a couple of years earlier. And like, so I don't understand like why The Rock is as great as it is, and this movie is just kind of subpar. So aside from our two leads, I've already mentioned the name Bruce Greenwood. Bruce Greenwood is one of my favorite actors of the 90s, and it has a lot to do with the fact that he was in a television series like 95, 96 called Nowhere Man. I don't think anybody listening to this is ever going to have heard of Nowhere Man, unless you listen to my regular podcast where I've mentioned it before. But anyway, Nowhere Man, a lot like the show The Pretender in the mid 90s. Like they're both about guys running away from shadowy agencies, and week by week they're trying to figure out their past, trying to figure out who they are, but they end up in a town where somebody needs help, and they end up helping that person through the course of a 44-minute episode. Nowhere Man is one of my literal favorite television shows ever, and it just got me hooked on Bruce Greenwood. I mean, he ended up doing a movie. Well, I mean, this was even before Nowhere Man. He did a movie Passenger 57 with Leslie Snipes. 97, I want to say it was. He was in a movie called The Sweet Hereafter. '98 he did Disturbing Behavior, one of those early like post-Scream teen horror-ish kind of movies, like more, he played a scientist that was brainwashing kids. Um, 2000, he was in the film Here on Earth, which I talk about quite often on this podcast, a movie that I really enjoy. Even though it came out in like March of 2000, I still hold on to it as like a 1999 movie. Like, it's got that same vibe as a lot of the teen romance stuff from 1999 that I love so much. So like he's in Here on Earth, which is awesome. Definitely like Bruce Greenwood is an amazing actor, and I'm very he does a good job in this movie for the very limited part that he is given and the crappy script that is and whatnot. But like, despite all of this negative stuff that I have said about Double Jeopardy, I still find it fun. I still think it's enjoying. Like, despite how factually inaccurate it is, despite how much like The Fugitive it is, if you just kind of lower your expectations and you want a fun ride, like it's not a bad time. Like then I'll be honest, there is a super tense scene, I'd say late act two, between Bruce Greenwood and Ashley Judd, where they finally come face to face again after she's done tracking him down. And like it's super tense. I didn't remember it until I just rewatched it, but like I, watching it a couple of days ago and being like, wow, like the dramatic tension that plays out in this scene is pretty solid for what it was. I mean, it's not a great movie, but it's a fun movie. It's an enjoyable movie. It's one of the better parts of the mediocre of '99. So let's move on to the last movie I have to talk about this week. It is a movie called Mumford. And Mumford is really kind of a weird film, but it's a weird film that I really like. And then I watched it again a couple of years ago during COVID in 2020. I gave it a rewatch. I don't know what triggered me to rewatch it. Um, but during COVID, I went back and I did rewatch a lot of stuff, specifically like stuff from 1999 and 2000 and stuff like that. So for whatever reason, I decided to rewatch Mumford. Um, and I honestly, when I got to rewatch it this week, I remember as I was starting it, I was like, oh man, like I remember not really liking this movie a lot a couple of years ago when I watched it. So let's see how it plays out now. And I did enjoy it again. I think I had high expectations for it from my first viewing in '99. I think they didn't get hit in 2020 when I watched it, but having low expectations this week, I did enjoy Mumford quite a bit when I rewatched it. So like, let's try to figure out what I did like about Mumford. What I like about Mumford is the people and the characters in this movie. Like it's about a small town and it's about people who just need people and like people who need different things from people. And it's how people react to not getting what they need from other people, like emotionally. Like it has a lot to do with how we as people and the different, characters in the movie, how they react to not getting the emotional validation or vindication or just getting emotions that they feel like they need. So like it's kind of a basic plot concept, but there's a lot going on, and like there's a lot going on that makes this film really really complex. But that's also like what's really good about this movie. Like I don't know. I guess like the message of the movie is like it's about romance, it's about love stories, and it's about how those things like how people are looking for those things in life and how they develop. And like watching like there's specifically there are like two love stories that I really enjoy watching how they play out. And this some of the other love story aspects of this are like the failures of love stories, but there's two like this is how a love story begins. It's paralleled, it's yin and yang with this is how some other relationships die. There's a lot of couples in this movie, and like I said, some of them are working towards being a couple, some of them are working through their relationship not working out. So there's all like I said, there's a lot going on, and it's a lot to get our main character to where he ends up needing to be. And so our main character is a therapist. And he treats his patients a little bit differently. Like he's not a cut and dry therapist like you're used to seeing it like on a movie or anything like that. Like At one point in near the beginning of the film, he cuts the therapy session short because he just tells his patient, "I don't want to hear about this anymore." The patient's telling him about a dream that he had, and he's just like, "Nope, I don't care." And the guy's like, "I've still got 18 minutes," and our main character is like, "No, you don't. Get out. Like it's done. It's over." They establish very early on that he doesn't treat his patients exactly like you would expect a therapist. So he doesn't just sit there and listen to stuff. He's somewhat interactive, he's somewhat talkative to an extent. We'll address that in a minute. But like he doesn't just sit there and take everything. Um this this different style that he has does not go over very well with the other two therapists that are in town. So there's these other two therapists, and they don't like the way that he's like everybody's going to him because he's getting this reputation of like, oh, he's really helping me. Like he doesn't treat me like a normal therapist. Like he does this stuff, and so like the other normal regular therapists in town just they don't like it. So like that's one of the underlying subplots that becomes very important to like later in this second act, near the end of the second act, beginning of the third act. Like that kind of comes back to bite him in the ass a little bit. So our main character is a guy named who goes by the last name Mumford, and he ends up moving to a town that's called Mumford. Um, and that also gets explained later on in the film, like how and why he ended up there, like with that name and things like that. Um, so yeah, as these other therapists get suspicious of him and they start like they start digging into him and like things start to go bad for our protagonist and like the truth comes out about who he really is and all this really weird bizarre stuff that's in his past. And it's one of those like it's like a peeling back the layers of an onion story. Like we as an audience, like from the beginning have to believe what we're told, and then as the story develops and layers of the onion get peeled back, we realize that the things that we thought were true about this character are not true at all. And he, at one point reveals some stuff, and then we're led to believe that he is a certain way. And as the plot develops, we realize that those were also lies. So he starts off by lying to us as an audience. He lies to us again when he lies to another cast member, but we as the audience believe that. And then another cast member or another character comes in and reveals some more stuff, and then he admits to those other previous lies, and we peel back some more onions. And it's really weird and complex, and it's bizarre. Like it's definitely not set like super in reality. Like it is set in reality. Like, there's nothing in this story that's not realistic, but the narrative structure and some of the things that the director does with the story are very subjective, and they skew the audience to believing things that are not real and not true. And like it's weird, but it works and it's interesting. And like so let's address these genius Lawrence Kasdan, like the dude that saved the Star Wars franchise. Like A New Hope's a good movie, but Lawrence Kasdan came in and wrote and directed Empire Strikes Back, and then he wrote Return of the Jedi, and like we can all agree those are far superior to the original Star Wars films. So like he's obviously obviously a genius when it comes to like characters and story and plot and things like that. Like he also wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then around that same time he wrote a movie called The Big Chill, which in the early '80s is one of those movies that like I remember watching, in my teen years, and then like it's one that holds up. I don't watch it a lot, but every couple of years I'm like I'm really in the mood to watch The Big Chill. Got an amazing cast. He wrote and directed it. Lawrence Kasdan knows characters. He knows how to write people that are people, so I appreciate the fact that he kind of, wrote something a little different. It obviously still is very character related, very character driven, very like central to the plot is these people, their actions and their emotions. But like I said, it does some kind of weird stuff thematically. Let's talk about the cast real quick. Cast is amazing. Lauren Dean is our lead, who plays Mumford. Late '90s, he did a couple of other really good movies like Gattaca and Enemy of the State. Both really good movies that he was a part of. Super cute. Hope Davis plays his love interest in the movie. Earlier in '99, we talked about the film Arlington Road. She was also in that movie. In 1999, I have to admit, I had a huge man crush on Jason Lee. That was the year that I was introduced to Mallrats and Chasing Amy. Jason Lee was a huge like man crush for me at that point in time. He plays a tech billionaire who's who's afraid of commitment with any woman because he thinks that they will only ever see him as a rich guy. Like he will never know if somebody actually likes him for who he is and not for the fact that he has money. So he makes it his life goal to build a sex robot so that he doesn't have to deal with real women. Don't worry, very small subplot, very weird subplot, but it gets addressed and he works through that problem and whatnot. But like in some very sweet way. Like Jason Lee's got a couple of sweet moments in his movie, despite the sex robot part of the plot. But like Jason Lee is great in this film. Alfie Woodard plays the object of his affection, and they've got some really sweet scenes together. It's really fun to watch how their relationship builds through the movie. Same thing with Lauren Dean and Hope Davis. Like it's really fun to watch their relationship build, fall apart, and then get attempted to be rebuilt again. Like again, there's a lot of really good relationship building stuff in this. At the same time, we'll talk in a few minutes about some relationship characters that just don't work in this movie. Super beautiful Zoe Deschanel is in this film. Has a bigger part than I remembered even from just watching it a couple of years ago. I really enjoyed her character in this movie. This is a year before she was in Almost Famous, so like these two movies back to back really got my crush on her. Going hardcore in the late '90s. She definitely is a her character is an extremely attractive character for a 19-year-old Shane who was watching this movie in '99. Um, Other cast members, Mary McDonnell. She's married to Ted Danson in this movie. Ted Danson's not a very good husband, and Mary McDonnell has a weird way of dealing with her husband not being a good husband. Mumford has to try to help her with that. Their son is played by Jason Ritter, which is a cool kid to have in the movie. Their daughter is played by Elizabeth Moss, who, when she came on screen this time, I was like, I recognize this girl. Who is this girl? And I don't remember if I looked it up back in 2020. I should have, because The Invisible Man came out in 2020. Most things that I know Elizabeth Moss from, she's a blonde. She's a brunette in this movie. Like, I recognized her face immediately, and I was like, who is this girl? I did have to look her up. I couldn't put it together myself. I blamed the hair color, but like Elizabeth Moss is their daughter. Like, so that's a great cast family right there. Martin Short and David Paymer are also in this movie. If you're a Big Bang fan, Simon Helberg has one scene in this movie where he plays Mumford's college roommate. Um, Kind of also an important minor subplot part that he plays. Like I said, he's not on screen very much, but he's there. So, and then like the last thing I want to talk about, this guy doesn't even get credited in the movie is Holt McCallany. Holt, like he's just this awesome actor that does a lot of little no-name parts. Like when you see him, you're like, I know that guy. I recognize his face. He's got a very distinct body. He was in Mindhunters recently on Netflix. He did a boxing show on FX that I'm drawing a blank of right now. But like, I don't know why he didn't get credited for being in this movie. Like he this is like his 13th project that he did, or like I don't know. He'd been around since like the early '80s, so like he like or maybe the mid '80s, maybe '86 or something was like his first movie. But like the guy had been around for a while, and I don't know why he didn't get credited for this movie. He's only in two scenes, but like that's still more than like Simon Helberg, who gets a credit in this film. So I don't know. Amazing cast, great cast, bizarre twists, but not necessarily in a bad way. Just like weird, okay stuff happens in this movie. Like I said, the entire movie is like peeling an onion. You think you know what's going on the outside, and then things keep happening that make you like reevaluate and reassess the characters and the plot and what's going on. And like as things keep getting peeled away and you go deeper and deeper, like I, one thing I don't know if this is super spoilery. Again, movie came out 25 years ago. I don't know if you're gonna watch it now or not, but like Robert Stack and Unsolved Mysteries play a part in one of the subplots of this movie. And like, if you know me, I'm a huge Unsolved Mysteries fan, especially the original with Robert Stack. So like having that be a subplot in this movie is something that I was just like, I really enjoy that. I really enjoy seeing that as part of the bizarre stuff that goes on in this movie. So like I can understand why this wasn't a hugely popular movie. I still think it's a good movie. I still think it's definitely worth watching. Even 25 years later, like 25 years later, there's a line in this movie that has literally stuck with me for 25 years. At one point, Mumford is asked why he became a therapist, and it's at this point part of his lies and whatnot. It's not even necessarily part of his lies. He's explaining how this version of him became a therapist, and he tells Jason Lee's character at one point in his life he learned that if he stopped talking and just listened to other people, they would eventually tell him their secrets. Sometimes they were asking him for advice, but other times they just wanted someone to listen to them. And so, like, that's literally something that has stuck with me for the last 25 years. And probably part of my time, working in the bar industry, like, I learned people just want to talk and be heard. They don't always necessarily expect you to have the answers. They don't necessarily want you to tell them what to do. They just need to get things off their chest and talk. And like literally that aspect of this movie has stuck with me my entire life. I think it's genius. I think it's really cool. And I really enjoy that part of Mumford. So I do highly recommend Mumford. It's not one of the greatest movies from 1999, but it's better than I remember like just watching it 4 years ago. So like it's free on Hoopla. If you have Hoopla, if you have a library card, you can get the Hoopla app. You can rent stuff from or borrow. I think they call it borrowing on Hoopla. You can borrow it for free. Um, Mumford's worth your time. Next week, we're going into October. October 1st is next week's episode, and there are four amazing movies that were all released on the same day. Let me think about it. There's two movies that I really love. There's a movie that I really enjoy, even though it's a very difficult film to watch. And then there's one that I have to rewatch this week because I remember loving it in 99. Very curious if it's still going to hold up. So we'll see. But it's going to be a big episode next week because I got four movies to talk about. We'll talk then.